And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Singularity Lab this week in tech. So we are joined by Brooks Lopez, who is my co-host. Brooks is a program planner in the defense industry and has a degree in psychology with a focus on neuroscience and learning and memory. Brooks, welcome.
Good to see you, Mike. Welcome, Jazz.
Welcome, Jazz Shaw, joining us. Jazz, it's been an incredibly long time. You are a editor and writer with Salem Media, Hot Air, and The Debrief. You've been covering futurism and technology for a very long time, and I'm so thrilled to have you here today. Jazz, how the hell are you?
I'm doing great, man. I got to just thank you for the work you continue to do. You were out for a while. Really love the new intro. You guys have been doing great work with the show, and yeah, we share a lot of topics in common that we both care about, and it's good to see you still doing it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It's great to be back. It's great to be covering this story. And it's fascinating because it's almost like this just gets faster and faster. I remember when we stopped doing the Singularity Lab, we took a little hiatus. We were talking about this idea of the technological singularity, this idea that AI and technology was going to be creating this extraordinary tsunami of change for humanity. And my God, if we are not seeing it happen every day, and it just seems to get faster and faster. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's fucking mind-boggling, Jazz. So what we're going to be covering today is Auto GPT and AI agents. So if you haven't heard of AI agents, we're going to be discussing that today. We're going to be talking about Jazz's relationship with ChatGPT and how he continues to poke at it and try to figure out if it is on its way towards sentience. We're going to be talking about Google CEO who says the discovery of AI could be more profound for the human species than the discovery of fire. So we're going to articulate what that could possibly mean. We're going to be discussing Elon Musk as he's launching his new AI company. We're going to be talking about generative AI art and how the US says, no, you may not copyright your generative AI art. We're going to be covering SpaceX. Yeah, that'll probably cover us. That's a lot of topics, huh?
It's a lot of topics.
Wow. I should probably leave now. I only knew about a few of these, so yeah.
I just want to say hello and welcome to everyone. Thank you guys for joining us today. Panda Salt is here. Tim F., Grant Levac, Michael Foley. We've got quite a few folks joining us. Thank you so much for being here today. If this is your first time joining us, make sure you click the subscribe button below. Click notify me so you know whenever we go live. If you're listening to us, make sure you check us out every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's dive in, gentlemen. Let's dive into this idea of Auto GPT and what AI agents are. So, anybody, Brooks, did you have? Do you have it? Could you clarify that? I've got some things to share. I don't know how deep down Jazz. Yeah, you give it your best shot.
I'll
share
let Jazz
what I know, and then we'll see what
see
what Jazz knows as well.
So, essentially, what happens is when you develop an AI, a large language model, you can utilize an API to create an agent. And what an agent would be is essentially similar to a bot that is continually running processes given whatever its directive is. So I think in one of the articles that you cited, the directive was go find me a pair of vintage Air Jordans, right?
Yeah, if you want to share that AI, Randy, the hype grows over autonomous AI. Go ahead, Brooke, sorry.
No, absolutely. So essentially, in the background, this agent would be finding sellers. First, it would be identifying what vintage Air Jordans might be. Hopefully, it doesn't try to purchase you like like old cardboard cutouts of Michael Jordan. I don't know. Maybe depending on how well you articulated your ask, that might be what it is. What it would be doing was identifying sellers. It would be identifying what the market should look like. It should be identifying what potential competitors are doing, and at the same time making sure that it's a secure and safe transaction, and then finally getting you the product that you asked for. So kind of a digital assistant in the background while the large language model is the database of knowledge that it's using to execute this.
Right. So let me give you, I'll give you a little more, just kind of like what this could mean for individuals. So let's say right now, Jazz, as a writer, is talking to Chat GPT, and he's going, hey, how do we solve, let's say he wants to know how do we solve world hunger. So he says, how do we solve world hunger? Then Chat GPT drops down and gives us 12 different ways we can solve world hunger. Well, what happens next? Nothing, because I technically am the human agent. I'm the one interacting with Chat GPT, telling it what to do. The idea of an automated agent is to take me, Michael, out of the mix, put in an automation, a bot to replace me, and say, okay, cool, ChatGPT, now break down first one into the first 5 steps I should do. And then it breaks those down. And then let's say step 1 is research this, in the internet. Instead of waiting for me to tell it to do that, the agent says, go ahead and go do this. And then it starts interacting with the web. It can communicate with other people. It can write emails. It can start actually automating all of the things that a human could do. And so there's a lot of hype around this, and we're not there yet. In the article that we just shared, which we should probably drop in the show notes, but if you don't have, if you wanted to check it out right now, what was the name? If you could pop it up on the screen again real quick. I think it's worth taking a look at, because there's a lot of hype around this, but we're not just there yet. But it's getting wild out there, because this is what a lot of people are saying will bring about the next generation of potential. This could lead us toward AGI, is what a lot of people are saying, but there's also a lot of hype surrounding this. What do you think, Jazz? Or go ahead, Brooke. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, the one thing that I see when I see this headline is, I think that there are quotes around the word autonomous. I don't know if that's to make us a little bit afraid of the autonomy of an agent, or if it's to identify that it's really not that autonomous. You're right, Michael, that you need to be like removed from the steps that are taken, but the directive is still yours. It's not like the agent's going to go change directive and say, oh, you want Air Jordans? We're going to go nuke, Thailand or something like that.
To get you your Air Jordans.
Yes.
What do you think, Jazz? Is this, are we making sense? Is this clear about what an agent, because we're all learning this as it rolls out. So I want to make sure, and this is the whole point of the show, is to ensure that as we move towards this technology and as we're developing it, we need to know where we stand. Any thoughts, Jazz?
Oh, absolutely. I completely disagree with at least one part of what Brooks is saying. It's a question of intent. I could go and take one of these auto GPT applications and say, I'd like a solution to solve hunger for humans on Earth, and then walk away and let it keep running until it comes up with an answer, and it might come up with some great answers, possibly. But a recent interview that I did with somebody else, they said, well, there's a lot of people in this world, and I happen to agree with this, that really have good intentions. They'd like to have the best possible outcome for people and try to reduce suffering. There are also people who go and shoot up churches. One of those people could go in and say, how can I bring about the destruction of mankind? Go. And then walk away and let it keep running until it comes up with a way, well, here's how we wipe out mankind, right? If you give something enough power and enough autonomy, enough free access to all the information out there, they might give you an idea that could do something like that. And doesn't that seem at least a little disturbing?
Yeah.
In all fairness, the solution to ending world hunger and destroying the entire planet is the same, because there's no hunger if there's no people. So
there you go. And that could be an AI resolution, right, Brooks? It's like, oh, we can't feed everybody. Okay, well, if there's no people, you don't have to feed anyone. So here's how there's no people, right? So yeah, that's in the back of my mind. We're going to go on and talk about all these things, but Michael and I have been talking for several years now, and we've frequently had a popular conversation about doom porn. What's your favorite scenario for the end of the world, or, well, the end of human civilization? And Michael will tell you, AI has always been in my top 5. There's always some others, and we can list them if we have time and you want to. But an actual human or above human level intelligence AI has always been in my top 5, frequently in my top 3. So
Yep. Yeah, for the last I don't know how long we've been talking about this, Jazz. Many
since
years now.
2017, 18. Yeah.
Yeah, and it always has. So I wanted to say a couple of things. I think point number one is that these agents, so Auto GPT, Baby AGI, are two agents that have
Baby
been
AI, yeah.
developed. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's just Baby AI, isn't it, or is it Baby AGI?
No, it's Baby AGI, and then Auto GPT, and again the idea.
GPT is the one I read this week. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're using the GPT-4 API. So the one good thing to quell any fears right now is that GPT-4 currently has guardrails. So if you're asking it to, destroy the world, you're going to be much more challenged using that large language model. Now, as more AIs begin to be deployed and released to the general public, those things can change. But for right now, those two specific agents are using the GPT-4 API. So that should make us feel a little better for now. But more to discuss on that, because I definitely agree, Brooks. We've got a lot to talk about when it comes to the alignment problem. And so speaking to your other point that you just made, Brooks, and I think you were alluding to this as well, Jazz, is this idea of the confusion or the misalignment of a goal. So solve world hunger. Great. We just nuked all humans. Oops. Right. So creating the right guardrails for these systems to make sure they're aligned with the proper outcomes is really important. Like this is not like something to brush under the table. Like, oh, obviously, no. These are real concerns about artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. And I think as the complexity and the dynamism of these different protocols continue to grow, we're going to need to be a little bit more clear and a little bit more eloquent in how we phrase those kinds of requests, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's just the idea, because as we've been watching OpenAI release GPT, and we're seeing all of these other large language models be rolled out. One of the things that hadn't occurred to me quite yet is this idea of an agent, and it immediately brought me back to the Matrix.
To the Matrix. Agent Smith.
Absolutely. Yeah, Agent Smith.
Mr.
Anderson. And this idea that, and so, way back when the Matrix came out,
1999,
these ideas of an autonomous AI agent were already in the sci-fi mix. And here we are in 2023, this week, or within the last 7 to 14 days, this idea of automated agents is emerging in popular development with the GPT-4 AI or API, which is wild.
And so it's really interesting because when we were kind of chit-chatting a little bit earlier, kind of developing some framework for what we thought we were going to talk about today. I asked Michael, I was like, so from this whole agent thing, what do you want to convey? He goes, well, what's an agent? And in my mind, well, it's Agent Smith, right? That is exactly what came to my mind. I don't think anyone here needs to go open envelopes with cell phones in them and run around the corner to the bathroom. But it's kind of the same premise. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, because it's basically an autonomous bot that communicates with the intelligence, that has its own memory, that can then, so if I program a bot to say your job is just to keep communicating with GPT-4 and come up with and execute answers. And here's the reason why it's overhyped right now is because it can't really do much. So like if a bot says, okay, we want to end world hunger, and then GPT gives it a bunch of things to do, and then it says, okay, break those down. The bot can help it break down further. The bot can then go out into the internet and do some searches, but it can't really execute much at the moment. It can't go buy anything. It can't do, it can't organize and execute other either LLMs, AIs, or humans to actually do its bidding for it.
It's not able to give itself access to other APIs.
Yeah, exactly. It's very limited at the moment, but that's going to be changing very, very quickly. So we want to keep our finger on the drumbeat of this. There's another interesting article, if you could pull it up, Randy AI. It's the paper introducing generative agents that simulate believable human behavior. And the idea, this is similar to kind of like SimCity, but the interesting thing is that these agents within this type of game are, instead of being pre-programmed with exactly what they would do in any specific circumstance, they're actually not sure what's happening. Oh,
it's the ad. we got ad attacked.
Top level production here, folks.
Yeah, 100%.
Our AI is flawless. He did it on purpose. There's no doubt.
That's right. That's exactly right. But basically the idea is they're starting to test these autonomous AIs utilizing LLMs, large language models, in virtual environments, and they're seeing emergent behavior from these little AI agents that they weren't necessarily expecting or had programmed in. And so this is kind of like the next generation of like SimCity and these sorts of things where you're actually going to see emergent behavior that is very creative and generative in its essence.
And so I think the really important part there was the emergent part. It's such it's such a unique idea that maybe these agents are going to just utilize what we would consider normal protocols. However, they may just actually try to behave like humans. And one of the things, there we go. So that's perfect, Randy. Thank you. I think this is the interesting part from this entire PDF. It's 22 pages. It's worth a read. I've read through it the first time, tried to make it through the second time. It's very dense. But one of the big observations were that the agents sometimes would, instead of deciding to go to lunch, they would end up just at a bar at like noon. Which is like the most human thing in all of history.
One could possibly do.
So they identified that as a potential error, and I said, error, that's human behavior. I mean, it might not be good human behavior, but it's human behavior, right?
That's fantastic. And they were like, and they were just giving it different prompts, and they were seeing, what behaviors emerge. And this is what's so fascinating, is it's not as if it's just one how do you even explain this? So each individual agent has its own. Each agent has its own connection to an LLM, and so the way they're communicating together is 100% original every single time.
Super novel and unique compared to the other agents.
Wild stuff. So is this the beginning of the end for you, Jazz? Or we got a little time left?
Oh, we got time left. I disagree with a number of the kind of underlying premises that you guys are talking about.
What do you got?
You can build the smartest, best large language model system out there that can go and draw on the total knowledge of mankind, at least the percentage of it that's been fed in to its library, and it can deliver some amazing answers. That's not the question for me. The question for me is, well, there's two. The lesser one is, the more we rely on this type of a system means that we don't need as many smart people coming up with new ideas that haven't been fed into the system yet, because we're just going into a stagnation system. Because AI, as far as we know, and we'll talk about that, doesn't come up with any ideas of its own. It's just drawing on a library of things that people have already said, right? And
is that so? So you were. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That makes it faster to research things, but unless you have a human being who's looking at that and going, "Oh, I've got A, B, C, and D. Oh, here's a new idea. And that's how we advance. If we believe what's being said about ChatGPT, the rest of the systems, they're never going to ask that question. They're just taking what is already known. And maybe we'll start firing everybody who was a writer, a journalist, a scientist, because we don't need you because we got ChatGPT, you know. Well, then nobody comes up with anything new.
There's nothing
That's
novel. Yeah.
right, nothing novel. It's all in the library. Do we want to freeze human advancement at this point when AI gets that powerful? Part two, of course, is, and I know we're going to talk about that, and Michael bring that in, but, well, if you freeze at that point, don't we start to decay? And do we reach a point where our technology outsmarts us? And I think that's one of my bigger fears.
So I got a quick question, but Brooks, I'll let you hop in here. So you almost said two different things. One is, should we stop humans from having thoughts, or
I think it was more of a
contributing to the
would
overall
it
system,
stop? Would it stop humans from having thoughts?
or contributing to systems versus? So you bring up a bunch of interesting ideas here. One is that you can have an AI superior and smarter than humans. If that's the case, then it must be able to come up with novel thoughts and ideas. And we can dig into that.
If we allow it
But
to,
the other piece
right?
is there ever a future in which humans aren't contributing? Yeah, I think those are both great questions. I don't think anything about the emergent behavior that we're seeing from the agents in the simulation tool necessarily. I'm not saying that those are novel or original ideas. I just think those are emergent behaviors that are enabled by LLMs in ways that no computer systems have been able to do previously. Sorry, Brooks, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I think you're right, and I think Jazz has great points though. So in my mind, they are kind of two different potential outcomes. One of which is we end up continuing to iterate on the same thought over and over again and making an attempt to improve things that aren't going anywhere. And the other was Wall-E. Thank you, Randy AI, the greatest AI of all time. Is that eventually we rely so heavily, and that was a word that Jazz used, was rely, so heavily on artificial intelligence that we cease to function and continue to evolve as a species, and we allow the intelligence we created to evolve.
So what are your Jazz? You brought up. So do you think, Jazz, that a sufficiently developed AI, or let's say large language model, has the ability to have novel thought? Or actually, let's do this. Let's define novel thought.
Right. That's been one of my questions from the beginning. We can develop systems, and people have envisioned this for a very long time. Go back and watch Colossus, the Forbin Project. That was a movie that came out in the 60s, where you come up with a machine that can actually think independent of its creators and immediately decide, wow, you humans are crap. You know, that's a huge leap. But now we're down to the point where people are doing things and we're asking questions like, are we creating something that's smarter than us? And I think your show is a great platform to ask the question, what does smart mean? What does it mean to be smart? What does it mean to be intelligent? ChatGPT has access to a library, and uses the word library, of trillions of digits of data, right? And it can go and search it at incredible speeds and perform functions that its creators told it to do, to go and gather information if you get a query and put it all together and present it in a conversational form. Does that mean it's actually thinking? I think that's the question tonight. I would like to see everybody explore what's the difference between thinking and producing a result that you were programmed to produce. And I've been doing a lot of experimenting with ChatGPT. I am not convinced that we have seen a sign that ChatGPT or any of the other programs have ever had an original thought. And if they don't, we're probably okay. We might do some stupid things with it. You get some bad results. But if it starts having an original thought, then personally, I go back to what I said to Michael earlier. We've had discussions about how I see the end of the world. The first time you see an original thought, and I've been looking for it, I really have been looking, that's the end of the world. And it could happen really fast.
So Jazz, I think you've got an excellent point there. I agree with you very much. I don't think I see anything original. It's regurgitated information that's been reprocessed, recycled, and redigitized to be consumed in a different and maybe unique manner, but it's not original. That being said, no, I just have a final point, and Michael, I want you to weigh in on this too, because I think you're kind of maybe the median between Jazz and I on this. I'm actually very, very hopeful for a future in which we have an artificial intelligence that can guide humans into a better future rather than the same shit we've been doing to ourselves for 50 years, essentially. So I truly think that there will be salvation in an AGI, and you believe there's going to be damnation and destruction in an AGI.
And I hope Brooke is one of the first people in the consignment camps who gets taken away when the robots take over.
Well,
so
in all fairness,
I will send you soup and an extra blanket in the consignment camps, Brooks. So
as everyone knows, I'm pretty hard to kill. So the robots, if they do consign me, I will end up being the last bastion of hope for humanity. But I also hope it does come early so that I have a little bit of warning.
I think this would be a good spot, Randy AI. If you could find, Jazz has been trying to poke at ChatGPT for this very reason, to see if there is any sort of intelligence behind it. One of the things I found interesting, do you want to walk us through these here, Jazz?
Oh yeah, what you're showing on the screen right now, I've been doing a series of experiments ever since I got signed up with beta for ChatGPT, because I wasn't so interested in if it's going to wipe out my job, which it might, or other impacts it would have. Is it awake? That's the question I've always had, because if it's not awake, it's still something we control. If it is awake, then, as we're already discussing, I see that as a huge problem. I have been trying my best to find ways to make ChatGPT reveal that it had an original thought, and I've written about this a lot of times. The first time we see AI having an original thought that didn't come from its programmers, we're about 5 milliseconds away from hell, and I'm sorry, Dave, I can't close the bay door or whatever. And the one you have up there right now was one of the experiments I've run. And I asked ChatGPT, instead of me asking you questions, I'd like you to ask me a question, because I thought, wow, that could suggest an original thought. It gave me a math quiz, and everybody can read it on the screen right now. But then I went on and I followed it up with more questions. It's like, well, that wasn't anything I said to you. How did you come up with that question? And it always had a pretty good answer. The one on the screen right now. as an AI language model, I don't have personal preferences or feelings, blah, blah, blah. It introduces so many answers with that. But it came up with an explanation that said, well, you asked for a question, so I gave you a question. And then when I pressed it further, it was just like, well, that's what I do. That's what I was designed to do by the model. And I don't want to disappoint anybody that's looking for an end of the world scenario. I kind of agree with that. It gave me a math quiz. Somebody that programmed it to say, hey, if somebody asks for a question, here's a math quiz you can use. And we didn't get it. We can get to this later. I sent Michael a couple of things before the show. My wife came up with some really incredibly interesting questions to ask that I asked. But this thing either is not sentient or somebody in the background is programming it with answers that are designed specifically to make sure, no, don't ask about this. No, I'm not sentient. I'm not about to take over the world. Here's why I'm just a robot.
In all fairness, though, as a human, if someone said, hey, ask me a question, isn't your first response like, what's 2 + 4? Right? Or is not mathematics the fundamental basis of answerable questions?
Thank you for saying that, the way you said it. If you're a human, that's the first response you would give.
Isn't ChatGPT's job to pretend to be human without being human?
No. Okay.
Well, it's trained on human data, right? So since it's trained on human data, that would make sense.
It's not supposed to be pretending to be a human. It's supposed to be just a tool, right? And so
it says over and over and over again in its responses.
Over and over again.
When I ask my hammer, it asks me to regurgitate not just the Pythagorean theorem, but the quadratic theorem as well, and it asks me to do it in song. So I don't understand what the difference is.
Did you say hammer?
You
have a hammer that talks to you? Do we have the right guest for this? Because if your hammer's talking to you, I think we're in a whole nother show.
That's fair. No, I'm not Thor. Only Thor's hammer talks to him, I believe.
Okay, Thor's hammer. All right, I'm out on this one. No,
the joke is a ChatGPT is a tool. A hammer is a tool.
ChatGPT is a tool. As far as I can tell, I have a whole list of questions that I sent to Michael that we can sit there and look at them all day. It's really good at saying at any ambiguous question you send to it, I'm just a large language model, but I have some information about this subject if you want to hear it, and it repeats it. I have failed to find a question that I could ask ChatGPT that gave me a strong signal that it was actually thinking, that it was actually coming up with an original thought.
I agree.
And to me, that's the breakdown line. And personally, and at the beginning of the show, I said, Michael and I have talked about this a lot of time. You know, I think if we ever actually do have real *AI, that's probably the end of civilization for mankind. It's in my top 5 list with a bunch of other things that wipe out humanity. But if you develop something that was that much smarter than us and suddenly had intelligence and said, oh, we got problems on this planet. Well, if I was that AGI, I'd probably go, oh yeah, people are the major problem. And maybe we should get rid of people.
So you make an excellent point, because for me, my top 5 reasons humanity ceases to exist are humanity, 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 and humanity.
Oh, you're not worried about like global impacts from huge impactors,
Well,
or
we've proven that we can move the smaller ones, and if the really big ones come, then we probably will. A few, certainly not myself, but a few individuals will fly off of this little rock, land somewhere else, and hopefully procreate.
is that how life got established here? By the way, Brooks,
Very likely.
it was on Mars and it got blown over here.
Maybe not Mars, but somewhere else, maybe.
Panspermia.
No, I'm not waving that away as not being true.
No,
I
I think it's
I'd like to hear from people who
I think
consider these things.
I think it's a very likely possibility. Yes, sir.
Sure.
I don't see why not.
So, I mean, it's certainly panspermia is a
I feel
very.
bad for Michael right now. We've just dragged him so far off down the rabbit hole.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, panspermia, that's always fascinated me. There's lots of different ways that life could have accelerated on Earth, but I do want to get back to your point quickly before we go on to this next point, which was we keep talking. I think it's very easy to confuse the conversation because AI in the actual words that we use to describe it is intelligence, right? So we can't we have to separate intelligence from sentience, right? This idea of the machine waking up, the idea of the machine having self-awareness. And I think it's also important to differentiate the possibility of a self-aware machine that's not sentient, meaning sentience often means I have feelings, I have pleasure, I have pain, I react, I'm emotional. These are
I have
things
a
that
desire to survive no matter what.
Well, one could argue that you could have an AGI or ASI that has that desire to survive but doesn't have feelings or emotions, right? So it's very difficult because we're literally potentially creating this new creature, which I agree with you both. GPT is not a creature. It is a tool. It is you in some of the questions and answers that you were asking GPT, Jazz, one of the things you asked it was about how it comes up with certain things or why it has different responses to things. And one of the key factors is it's got an amount of random it's built in these language models to have a different level of randomness. So when I go into the OpenAI playground and play with their API, I can change a little slider that allows me to change the level of randomness. There's multiple sliders you can use to change how it's gathering this information. And then it's using, it's basically an autofill that's filling in the blanks as it goes. So we know these are tools. We know these are machines. We know this thing hasn't woken up yet.
So I have to cut it really quickly though, because you can't intentionally create randomness, right? That's one of the base laws of game theory, right? Is that
Talk to me about that. What do you mean?
When you're changing the slider on randomness, it's actually a totally different. And I'm not sure what it is in the algorithm that they're changing, but you can't change randomness. Randomness is like a base function of the universe, we'll call it at best, right? It's a roll of the dice. It's it's not even a flip of the coin because that's not even that random. It's just that's due to real factors. But randomness itself is something that's so intangible that you couldn't change a slider to create it. I love that they call it that. I think it's very important that we call it that.
You're thinking it's the wrong. It's. I'm using the word randomness when it's not the right word.
No. You're not using the wrong word. It's impossible to change randomness because it's random as a function of itself.
So here, let me read this to you, and let me see if you agree with this or not. So Jazz asked ChatGPT, does the algorithm you use incorporate any sort of random number generation process? So, and then it says, so that's a bit of a different question, but it's interesting. Its response. It says, yes, some of the algorithms used in language models like mine incorporate randomness as a way of generating more diverse and varied responses. For example, when generating text, the model may choose from different possible words or phrases based on probabilities, which can be influenced by factors such as context of the input, the frequency of the word in the training data, and the overall coherence and grammaticality of the output. So that's its definition
But
of
there's the key word
randomness.
there. It says probability, right?
Okay.
And any function of probability is that it is not indeed random.
Okay, so this is a nomenclature. This is a definition. We're in the middle of a definition problem.
So Jazz disagrees with me, and I like that. So what do you think, Jazz?
No, I'm sorry. I totally disagree with that. You have a system that's set up that either is doing what you programmed it to do,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you program a system, it could do.
You're agreeing with me then? Yeah.
Right. Or it's doing something totally unexpected that it was never told
That
to
would be
do.
random. That would be random.
That would be random. And the questions that I asked ChatGPT, I have never been able to find a hint that it said something that it wouldn't have said. And I'm using the word said by responses. By following the programming the humans gave it. What I'm looking for is the first sign that AI has an original thought. Michael and I have talked about this before. I've tried my best. We talked about this already. Try to get it to come up with an original thought.
I myself have been trying this too.
I have two possible outcomes. One, we don't know how human thought actually works. We don't know how the brain processes data. We don't understand that, and that's my personal belief.
It's true.
Or we have AI that is doing the same thing, and it's hiding it from us. That's the conspirator theory. I don't think we're there yet, because I don't think we know how our own brains work. Really, that's the bottom line for me.
So that's an excellent platform to kind of discuss a combination of one of the quotes just came up on the viewer chat, which is what constitutes an original thought. Well, it's interesting because any original thought that I could possibly imagine requires some sort of an exterior output that gets iterated and slightly modified by our own brains or perceptions. And that's where the word perceptions really comes into this, because what we perceive is not always what our sensory inputs really inputted. That's not the most eloquent way to say that, but that's what really happens.
But absolutely. We have five senses. The information that's transmitted from those senses then goes into the brain, and it's stored as a memory. And oftentimes, 100% of the time, that is not reality. That
100%
is
of the time, that is. You are absolutely correct. And not only that,
disagree with what you both just said, but
and not only.
Wait, say that.
Oh no, go ahead, Jazz. Sorry, please.
No, we have our senses. We have our five senses, and they relate to our understanding of the universe. The more we learn about bizarre things in physics, there could be more than the basic 3 dimensions that we understand, right? There's a lot of information that could be out there. I'm not smart enough to know it, but there could be a lot of data out there that we're not interpreting correctly, right? I mean,
there's a ton of data we're not just interpreting, period, right? There are infrared ranges of light we can't see.
We're seeing.
There's ultraviolet ranges of light we can't see. There's got to be smells we can't smell. There must be tastes we can't taste.
Absolutely. There's light bands that we can't see. So what does that do to this conversation?
So what it does is it begs the question: what happens when we take an AGI and try to give it sensory inputs like its own cameras, its own I hate to go back to the 1990s movie Richie Rich, but what was the little smell device that they had created that can smell different things, whatever that is, that takes in the chemical sensory inputs and turns it into a smell? I mean, who knows? If we give an actual artificial intelligence its own sensory inputs and see what it makes of it, that will be, I think, the opportunity for it to have novel thought.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not.
I would like Michael to weigh in on one thing, if that's okay. This boils down to the basic thing: are humans capable of creating something smarter than themselves? And if they could, what would that thing do?
Well, I mean, so let's just go back 1 second to this idea of a novel thought. So if we're thinking, we started this part of the conversation with the idea that we have senses, and it's because of those senses that we gather knowledge.
We perceive.
We perceive, right? And so that's an input. Right now, ChatGPT has an input. It just happens to be language. It's not a sense other than it's gathering inputs. So it's gathering inputs. It doesn't.
Great point. It has a singular input.
It has a singular input, right? Or maybe a range. I don't know exactly how these things are trained.
It's a range, actually. I would argue it's a range.
It's going to be some
we can
kind
show
of
it
range.
images. We can show it images. That's true.
Yeah.
We can show it images
absolutely.
and videos and stuff. Yeah.
Right. So, but that doesn't make it sentient. That doesn't make it have a consciousness. So I don't think senses are enough to give something consciousness. But again, we don't know. But going back to this idea of what is an original thought, I'm not convinced that humans are capable of original thought. Nobody in this room has yet to convince me that a human is capable of original thought. Because, and here's why. Because I have been trained. I have been trained on millions of data points since birth. I don't know if that was
I think it was a sneeze.
We got a lot of pollen here. Sorry.
I couldn't tell if he was scoffing or if that was a pollen reaction.
No, I was just I'm having bad reactions. So
you're fine. I'm sorry to hear that. But do you get my point? Like,
absolutely.
What constitutes the idea of a novel thought?
So I want to create a really, really strange analogy here, right? So we were talking kind of about, and this is, I think, going to transition into one of the other articles we have, that what we do is we intake inputs, we turn them into perceptions, and those perceptions maybe stimulate certain kind of thoughts. So if we don't have truly novel thoughts as people, what we do is we iterate on whatever comes through our tiny little processor. Okay? Those could be analogous to mutations. So if we're going to talk about something like evolution, the only way that any species ever got from being a single cell organism was through just really, really bad mistakes that somehow happened to create a better sense of survival.
Can I break in and ask Brooks a question?
Yeah.
Do you think there is a delineation between original thought and data processing? I'll just leave it at that. Do you think there is a delineation?
So I don't know that there's necessarily a delineation, but I do think that, and this is where I'm going to get kind of way out into the void, and you guys are going to have to like drag me back by my arms and legs, but isn't the way that any organism reads its own DNA data processing?
Sure, but yes, absolutely.
We're on that one. No,
I think so. But those are two different questions. One, because we have the human brain, which is capable of conscious thought, and then we have our biological systems.
Is it, Michael?
Capable of
are we capable? Is the human brain capable of conscious thought, or is the human brain a receptor?
It is a receptor, but it's also a processor. So to Michael's point, it is a processor.
Okay. I just want to bring that into the conversation.
I think that's a great point, Jazz. And so what I was saying though is that if our body as the non cognizant part of our body, its job to refresh cells, breathe, do all of those autonomous things that we do, it bases the vast majority of those on the DNA structure that we have, which
Okay.
would be data, right? It would literally be a series of ones and zeros for the most part, and some of the phenotypes are more than ones and zeros. I understand that, but at a very base level, it is data processing, and it's processed at a time and a rate that changes based on the specific outcome of all of the cells that you're made up of. And at that point, how we got from being a single-celled organism to being a myriad of people that all have the same species here as human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, was a series of mutations over the course of billions of years, or at least that's what I believe. I mean, I can't
Sure.
speak for everybody, but and so my assumption would be that somewhere along the line, and Michael, I'm getting back to your question about whether we've had original thought, because I think you make a good point that it's all just iterations on what we bring in. But a mistaken iteration on what you thought you perceived, and maybe it wasn't exactly what you perceived, so you created something that didn't ever actually happen, would be new and novel. And that would be very analogous to a mutation that happened in a species that created a new species.
That's a really interesting point. And one could go on and look at sort of humans in the microcosm in our evolution. And you look at, let's say, the Egyptians who built the pyramids. I don't believe that the pyramids were conceptualized in a void.
No, no one said, hey, you know what I want? A giant half diamond sticking out of the ground.
What happened was they looked at nature and said, what are the forms that we can replicate from nature in order to create this thing? And that's why I'm so interested, and I'm so glad you brought this up, Jazz, of this idea of the novel thought and what separates human intelligence from artificial intelligence. And I'm not sure that novel thought is even the thing that makes an AI sentient. I would actually argue, and this is coming from just an idiot on, in the world, but I would actually argue that an artificial intelligence could be just as effective, if not more effective, at creating things that appear to be novel, but are just more intricate versions of what came before.
And we're into an area, and I'm run out of time, and I apologize for that. But I really hope you guys will explore the idea. It's not a question of, oh, the computer might be a huge bot that's out to destroy us. Do we understand what consciousness is? Do we understand?
No, we don't.
Do we process information in our brains locally? Is it externally? And then when we go building things like ChatGPT, and they start coming up with all these weird answers that scare the crap out of people, and they really don't scare the crap out of me. But do you think we should spend more time asking the question, what is thought? Are humans unique? I don't think they are. I think animals think.
So.
Yep, I think there's a lot of biological thought. The question is, as humans, can we technologically create thought? That's the question I want to leave the show with. Are we capable of creating artificially thought? Is that a fair question to ask?
It
and
is.
If we don't understand how we think, how could we potentially create it in something else?
Right. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Or if we accidentally,
read me on. So
Thank you so much, Jazz. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for Jazz joining us. Jazz, if folks want to learn more about you, read your articles, how can they find you?
I'm not hard to find. At Jayshaw on Twitter. I'm over on social media. You can find me anywhere just by on that name. I'm pretty unique. So
You are indeed. Jazz, thank you so much for joining the show. Thank you
Thanks,
so much
Jazz.
for porting
Thanks for
the
guys.
for supporting the
Really
Singularity Lab as much as you have.
It's been a pleasure. Absolutely.
Thanks, Jazz. All
Thanks.
right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. But let's go for another minute on that, because I think that's a really important question that Jazz brings up. What are machines capable? Will machines be capable of thought? I think the answer is probably yes. Is it the same consciousness that humans have? I would argue probably not. But we are designing these things based on, and again, this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier, that the Egyptians didn't build a pyramid because they conceptualized it internally in a void. It wasn't a shaman who just saw this vision. Now, maybe it is because based on intuition, because of all the inputs that shaman has had in nature. But intuition, I think, is often relegated to this idea of woo, when intuition is not even close to that. Intuition is your brain's ability to conceptualize things based on experience, based on what your and potentially. So there may be potential that it even can reach back into your DNA. That's much more hypothetical. But go ahead, Brooks. You had a point.
So I think you made like 5 awesome points there. Okay. First amongst them is you make an excellent point in that, yes, a pyramid could have been, oh man, look at those mountains. How fantastic are those? How can I make myself a mountain? Right. You have an article coming up that Sundar Pichai from Alphabet, Google, believes that artificial intelligence may be more important than fire and electricity for human futures. Strongly disagree. If it wasn't for fire, if it wasn't for fire, we wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for electricity, we'd still be cleaning up horse shit out of our fucking streets.
Okay, so what do you mean when you say we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for fire? What do you mean?
Oh, our species would not have continued to exist without fire.
I disagree. You think what essentially fire was discovered 100,000 years ago, 200,000 years ago by
There's
the
a lot of
species?
ambiguity on that, but it was most likely not even Homo sapiens sapiens that created fire or utilized fire.
Okay, so you're saying our species as we are today would not be here without fire.
Correct. It was very likely that Homo erectus or Cro-Magnon man would have not continued to evolve if it wasn't for fire.
So let's log that little piece of data. Go on.
Okay, let's do that.
I'm already building a case against you.
You're more than welcome to.
Okay,
so
here we go.
1.7 to 2 million years ago. Okay, Homo in the Homo range, which you can't say that in Florida anymore. So,
sorry.
I don't think you can say either Homo or erectus in Florida any longer.
Yeah, you probably can't. 1.7 to 2 million years. It claims that the earliest definitive evidence of the control of fire by the Homo.
I called it right on Homo erectus.
So range from 1.7 to 2 million years ago. Wow. Okay, so let's. I'm still building a case against you, but go on.
Be my guest. So 2 million years ago. That puts us in a position where we have come down from the trees for the most part, and we're starting to hunt game. Okay.
And the reason that's important is because it allows for the growth of our brains, right? It condenses the amount of calories we can consume at one time, which creates a sort of cerebral explosion, we think.
Precisely. The fat and protein that we're intaking is not like having to eat 20 pounds of leaves and just be a panda all the time.
It gives us the ability to consume all our calories in one fucking whopper, and then we can go on and do all of our thinking for the rest of the day.
And you're good for a day or a week, maybe. Who knows, right? So that's a big deal. That's a big deal to me, I think.
It's a big deal. No, it's a big deal.
Now the other one that I would
argue. Wait, real quick. So fire allows the human species, the Homo species, to move into Homo sapien. So you're saying,
From
and
Erectus
I
to
would agree with
sapien.
you.
This is conjecture. It's conjecture.
Okay,
Hard and
sure.
away conjecture. But
Yeah.
I would believe that we are no more than slightly evolved primates without fire.
Agree. I completely agree. And we can both be completely wrong, but I completely agree. Go on.
So the other one that he mentioned was electricity.
Okay.
And this is me actually just going that you can't have AI without electricity. So at its basis, it'd be impossible to.
Well, I mean, yeah. Okay.
In a different universe with a different set of physics, we don't need electricity maybe to run an artificial intelligence. But here,
I wasn't going to say that, but
okay,
fun. Okay, so here's my case. Okay.
Right.
So we both agree or believe that fire was the impetus that expanded the cerebral capabilities of human beings. That
certainly one of them, right? Maybe not the only one, but definitely a big part of that, right?
Supercharge our momentum into the type of thought that we're capable of today.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue that AI has the capability to transform our species from Homo sapien to a new species, to a new transhuman species.
So, okay, I'm with you, and I agree with you. That would indeed actually make it as important. I don't know that I would agree that it's more important, but if my original statement was that fire was more important, I would be wrong if they were equal. So ipso facto, you could indeed be right. So I bow to you, Michael. That's an excellent point.
I believe we have come to a convergence in our thinking on this, and I think but you make an important point, and that point is it may not be more important than fire, because we probably wouldn't be here without fire, but it could be as transformative as
very
fire.
Much could. And I know that I've mentioned this before, and one day I will actually get you to read the whole damn thing. But there is excellent science fiction that would argue that at a certain level of technology, having corporeal bodies is a huge detriment to us. Because for us to just go exist in an electrical substrate and be artificial, well, not artificial, we'd be real intelligences ourselves that could touch directly all the information of the universe, is a lot more efficient than having a meat body.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there is a problem with consciousness. So if you and I wanted to upload our consciousness or merge with AI in a way that left our meat body behind, I do believe, based on everything I know about biology and physics, that you would just have a copy in the AI. It would not be your original consciousness. You would have a sort of digital copy of yourself.
I don't disagree with that. And now we're getting into a very deep philosophical discussion about whether or not would a copy not just be you, since it has all of your previous memories and thoughts. The only thing that you would be potentially missing would be a soul, perhaps.
Perhaps, if you believe in that sort of thing.
If you believe in that sort of thing.
But
otherwise, why would a copy matter? Why would being a copy matter?
Well, I just so if I'm going to leave a legacy, that's one thing. If I'm going to leave my memories, my thoughts, my consciousness to continue to create in some sort of digital world, that would be one thing. But it's just because that copy exists, the original is lost. My me is the original. It can't be the copy.
What if your consciousness transfers to the copy? Does it matter?
I don't think that's possible, though.
So I don't know. I have no idea. This is obviously purely hypothetical.
Sure.
But
we are deep down the realm of purely hypothetical.
Would a copy of you not have a copy of your consciousness?
Don't know the answer to that question. I don't know.
I don't either. Because that may be built into whatever we are copying, or it may be something so wholly different. And so I just saw NeuroStream said ship of Theseus. You know the ship of Theseus, right?
I do. It's a great analogy. Will you explain it for everyone?
Absolutely. So ship of Theseus is if you were to take all of the different parts of a boat or a ship and over time replace each and every one, say over the course of like 10 years or whatever it may be, even if it's a week, whatever. But if you replaced every single part, is it still the original vessel? And some people say yes, because you just replaced each part. Some people say no, because it has none of its original parts. But why does it matter? Because ultimately, as long as the
Right.
vessel still works and is shaped the way that it was designed, why would it make a difference?
Okay, so here's the difference. The difference is I can take the ship of Theseus and design it in a computer system, and it is not the same thing that that physical object contains in our physical reality. It is a mathematical concept within a digital world. It's not the original copy. Now, if I, Michael, had a lung replacement with a synthetic 3D generated AGI developed lung, and then I had my heart replaced, and then I had my ears replaced, and my skin replaced, and my liver replaced, and
that's the true. That's the true ship of Theseus. It's part by part. Yeah, that's the true ship of Theseus. It's part by part.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So okay, I'm usually with Randy. It's definitely not a koala. First off, they all have chlamydia. Okay. Second off, koalas won't eat eucalyptus leaves if they're not on the tree because they can't even identify their leaves. Their brains are so smooth that the worst artificial intelligence ever created is still smarter than a koala.
Okay.
But if it's on the back of a giant turtle, I'm totally there with you, Randy.
Yeah, 42.
But so no, I think you make an excellent point, Mike. Right. So yes, if you are piece by piece replaced, and that's what the real ship of Theseus idea is.
Right. And that's why I think it's different, because like I don't know that the neural networks and the brain matter with that, because we don't know what consciousness is again. And Jazz brought that up earlier. So to think that my consciousness is going to be transmitted into the digital sphere, I don't know. Anyway, we could speculate that for like
let me give one more point on it, and then I'll let you move on.
Only if you promise me to put a fist between your mouth and your there you go.
Yes, sir. How's that? So I will do it this way. You exist from birth as a individual ship of Theseus. Every cell in your body is replaced over the course of your lifetime.
Yes.
So there is absolutely no way that you are the same series of cells. There's not a single living cell in your body that was there when you were born that is there when you die. And that does not make you a different person.
Or does it?
Or does it?
Well, no, that's a great question. And somebody mentioned this earlier. I think it was more Freetro, but like the idea of like, am I who I am now versus who I was 2 hours ago, 10 days ago, 3 years ago? So from both a psychological perspective and a biological perspective, I'm in constant change. I'm in constant flux. And I have very different. I used to be a dreadlock wearing, hippie hiking, weed smoking. Well, I still smoke the weed. Vegetarian, and now everything about that is different, except for I'm still a hippie at heart, and I still smoke the weed.
I used to
everything
be a
else
woman,
has changed.
So
I still am at heart in this life.
I don't know.
That's fine. That's fine. I respect that.
No, me too.
But I definitely think that there are this ship of Theseus idea is super valuable, because we are always changing.
Always changing. Yeah.
Yep.
And hopefully always growing, right? And evolving.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a good thing. Okay, so I really quickly, and I know we're running out of time here, but I do want to hit some of these other stories real quick, and maybe we could just shotgun them. But I want to hit on, if you could, Randy, if you could bring up the image of the progression of the scientific method and its escalation with artificial intelligence. I think this is an important piece of what we're about to see and why we're headed, why I believe we're headed towards the technological singularity. So it's called, let me see if I can find it for you real quick. It's under, Randy, it's under the bullet point called AI evolution. It's a nature.com article. If you could just pull this up quickly. So basically, the idea is that we developed the scientific method back in the early
No dice,
1500s. What's that? Can't find
You
it.
can't have that article because that article was the article that created all the horrible noise with its advertisement earlier.
Oh,
If you
weird.
pull
Let
it
me-
up and go right to the image, because that's what you wanted to see, right, Michael? Was
Yeah,
that delineation image?
let me see if I can
Okay.
do something real
And while
quick.
you're looking for it, Michael, I want to bring up something that was interesting that Jazz
Yeah.
mentioned that is very correlative to this. So Jazz was saying that if indeed an artificial intelligence was just continuing to iterate on existing human knowledge and not creating any new thought, our developed acceleration, our accelerated discovery would not actually discover anything. It would just be a continued iteration of the same thing getting refined over and over again without anything new.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's exactly why I bring this up. Because even if these GPT models or these large language models or this AI continues to develop at extraordinary rates, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has a mind of its own, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it creates consciousness. But what it 100% will do is accelerate the rate at which we can make hypotheses and test hypotheses, and the speed at which. So if you look at this particular example, if you're just listening, I'll walk you through this. So in the early, I'm guessing this was pre-1600, was the first paradigm of the scientific method. So empirical science, observation.
That goes back to like Archimedes.
Okay, which would be what? Do you have any?
Man, like late Grecian, late Egyptian, early Grecian, 500 AD, maybe the latest.
Okay, great. Thank you. So empirical science, first paradigm, observation, experimentation. And then after the 1600s through the 1950s, we had theoretical science, which was the second paradigm, which is scientific laws, physics, biology, chemistry was developed. In the post-1950s, computational science evolved, enabling us to use simulations, molecular dynamics, mechanistic models. And then into the 2000s, big data science. Now we have big data, we have machine learning, we have patterns, anomalies, visualization. And now with AI, we're able to accelerate discovery by hypothesizing, testing, assessing, reporting, questioning, studying things in turbo mode, dude. Like the speed at which we're about to see science evolve is like, I'm going, I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about it. It's so crazy.
So these non-linear patterns of growth are frequently called hockey sticks, right? So you have like this, just like it's showing here, it's a kind of gradual evolution, and then next thing you know, it's so high the asymptote gets almost reached, right? We're almost to perfection, and we're so close to that neck of the hockey stick that we're going to be developing more information, and we're only on a week-to-week basis. We're trying to just cover what's happening in new developments, and each week it's speeding up for us, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
look at what we've had to try to consume and regurgitate to everybody in a week.
We're trying to bring you the tip of the iceberg every single week as this thing accelerates, and it's just gonna, like, this is the march of the singularity. Like and whether or not you want to use the term singularity or AGI or ASI or just technological evolution or transhumanism, whatever term you want to use, like, it's coming, and it is coming fast. And the level to which we are about to experience some extraordinary disruptions in economics, science, material science, evolving AI is just unprecedented, and it's only going to get faster. Like, we're gonna have to start doing a show every day in order to keep
to
y'all
keep
updated on
up.
this.
And I mean, one of the things that we've got some underserved markets, right? Like things like nanotechnology, biomedical research. I mean, these things are going to continue to just exponentially grow at a rate that there's no way that if we took all of our friends that look into stuff like this and turned them into one team, we still couldn't keep up with it.
It's crazy. And yeah, and the beauty of, I absolutely believe we're going to eradicate cancer in the next 10 years. I really believe that. The amount of hypotheticals we can create, the amount of potential, right now we have AIs that have dramatically increased the pace at which we can understand how proteins are folded. As we can start to develop new ideas for potential chemical new molecules that we can begin to create and test. And I mean, the speed at which we're going to be able to bring human disease to its knees is going to be absolutely fascinating over the next 10 years. And I'm so here for it.
And what is that going to cause us to demand even higher? And the answer is going to be somewhere else to live, right? And so we're going to have to utilize artificial intelligence and some of these other technologies to get us off of this rock, because there's going to be, no one's going to die. No one's going to die.
I have an argument for that, because one of the things that Elon Musk keeps claiming is that we are headed towards a population cliff, where we're not making enough babies, we're not producing enough humans, we're not going to have enough blah 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 to run the machine. This dude sees automation coming. He sees AI coming. Tell me why we need more children to wipe our butts when we get older. Tell me why we need more people to plug into this capitalistic machine. Doesn't make any sense to me. For a guy who understands this idea that we are going to see a decrease in productivity because we're not making enough humans, but understands the increase in productivity we're going to see from AI. Like, I don't understand why it doesn't make perfect sense, why we won't hit an equilibrium that makes absolute sense for us to stay here on Earth.
The equilibrium is very recognizable, or the non-equilibrium is very, very recognizable for we'll call it capitalism, because what's going to end up happening is the jobs, and we can replicate some of them with robots and some other things, or replace, not replicate, sorry, with robots and other things. But we saw this during the end of the pandemic. The base level jobs that keep us surviving as a species, making sure that litter and trash is removed, making sure that refuse is placed somewhere else, the logistics, making sure, and trucks being driven, sure, that'll be replaced. There are a lot of them, but we still need people. And those people are not going to be 85 and 90-year-olds who don't get cancer. They're not going to be 120-year-olds who don't get cancer, because those people have already gotten to where they want to be, and they're not going to go back and work, and I don't blame them. So there is still going to be a demand for a workforce, particularly a young.
Right, but like, we're gonna have but my point is as AI starts to whittle down the jobs, you're gonna have a lot less jobs, and the jobs that you will need people for are gonna be the jobs that you're talking about, but there will still be plenty of people for those jobs. And I would actually argue that as the definition of work changes over the next 10, 15 years, because we're not going to need the idea of knowledge workers, people who, are digesting information and coming up with ideas and coming up with solutions, those are going to be taken over by AI. And we're going to have a very, very different world, and work is going to look a lot different. And I actually believe that if we can utilize AI to reduce the amount of inputs we need in society, then we can give people a lot more choices of what they choose to do with their time. And a lot of people have passions for things that you wouldn't even expect, who would want to still do the jobs that nobody wants to do. I truly believe that. You have people who love to pop pimples in the world right now, today.
Those people, they sicken me, and I can't deal with that. But
these are real people. But my point is, if you have a UBI and your food is covered, and you have a replicator, sure, and you have a machine that creates everything you need, then you can spend your time doing the things you're interested in and like to do. And I guarantee you there are enough people in the world today to cover those jobs just out of pure interest and passion and alone.
In a purely
I think.
egalitarian society, you are 100% right.
I think so.
That being said, given the way the last $50 trillion that have been produced in the Western Hemisphere have been not allocated, but consumed by the top 1%, if they continue to amass the kind of wealth they're amassing, there's no way that it's going to get reshared with the general populace. We're not going to see UBI. We're certainly not going to see an opportunity for people to pursue what they have passion for, but rather they're going to have to do what they're either good at or the best thing that they can get paid for. So something has to change.
I hear you. Yeah, something has to change. But again, I think that if we are able to produce the types of AI and the types of technology and machines that can actually, again, going back to Star Trek, the replicator, and if I can press a button on a machine and
if you can remove scarcity,
yes, that will be the key. That will be the key.
But what we'll continue to see, and I think this is the fear for a lot of people, and the concern for maybe Elon, maybe not, but I think what we're going to continue to see is that there are going to be people who are not necessarily helped by those benefits initially as they get rolled out. And unfortunately, those are the people who are procreating the most across the planet at this point in time. They don't have access to modern technology, modern medicine. They don't have access to birth control or some of the other healthcare benefits that they should need. And they're the ones procreating. The people who are out there who have master's degrees and PhDs, regardless of any other socioeconomic factor or ethnic factor, they're not procreating.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think the average is like 2.1 children at the moment for folks at that level of society. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not saying that this is going to happen without pain. There's going to be pain in between here and there.
Something's got to give.
But I mean, we have to develop the vision for the future we want. I mean, that's the other purpose of this show, not just to walk us through the incoming doomsday scenario.
Yeah.
As to what the fuck do we want to create.
So,
and
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I had.
I was going to say, I don't see that doomsday scenario. I agree with you, Mike. I mean, I really think that we're going to get maybe not novel answers as we talked about before, but certainly if we can take an agent and have it iterate the ideas that we've been thinking about, produce answers on logistics. How do we get the excess food produced in nations like Canada, the United States, to countries that need it, right? How do we take something like a malaria vaccine and expedite that? How do we get rid of cancer? How do we get rid of infant mortality? If we continue to answer these questions with an artificial intelligence, and it doesn't just go, hey, you guys seem like schmucks, I'm getting rid of you, which I don't see that outcome. At the end of the day, as bad as humanity has been over the course of its existence, I still see more good than bad. I mean, call me crazy, but I still see more good than bad.
I'm an optimist too, as long as we get the alignment problem right with AI and it doesn't kill us. Speaking of AI, Elon Musk founds new AI company called X.AI. Elon Musk recently purchased 10,000 GPUs and applied for
It's in Nevada, isn't it?
Yeah, he applied in Nevada. And this was he hasn't even admitted to this yet. This was just dug up by some journalists. But yeah, I mean, well, we knew he bought the GPUs. I think Business Insider broke that story, and then the business license that was requested in Nevada was also dug up. So we know this is happening. We know that if Elon can't be in charge of it, he's very upset about it. He has to be in charge of everything.
Well, of course, but that's why he called for that 6-month hiatus so that he could get his company up and running.
I swear, like I knew that shit. We called that. If you go back and listen to a couple episodes
3 weeks ago,
we called that shit. We get a lot of things wrong here in the Singularity Lab, but we got that one right. Yeah. So
we wanted to play a little catch up.
I want to play a little catch up. The generative AI art. So this is interesting. If you could pull this one up as well, Randy. This photographer won an award and for an AI generated image at the Sony World Photography Awards. Boris Elgidson himself has come out and stated, after winning, result was announced that this isn't a photograph at all. It's an image generated by inputs he provided to the open AI photo tools. Now, he did say he went back and did some additional editing to this in other programs, but ultimately the original was generated and won in the world and won Sony's award, which I love the fact that he just trolled this award and then came out later and said, you know what, this was AI generated.
It's going to happen at the Oscars. I mean, it's going to happen, right? And ultimately, someone's going to win a Nobel and be like, yeah, no, the whole thing was just written by an AI. So, figure it out.
But speaking to that,
I was just saying, this goes all the way back to, like, what was it, 1911 or something like that, where the current head of the U.S. Copyright Office said that all important things that have ever been invented, it may have been trademark instead of copyright, but said all important things that have ever been invented or will be invented already have.
That's amazing. And that speaks to humans' absolute inability to predict the future. We are horrible futurists.
We're actually not only terrible at predicting the future, we don't even know how good we are at things.
It's really true. So, not in response to this, but in adjacent to this, the U.S. Copyright Office says that AI-generated works of art are not eligible for copyright. So there was an instance, I think it was back in 2019 or 2020, that the first AI-generated artwork, or no, it was late 2022, the first AI-generated artwork was sent to the Copyright Office. The original copyright was given. It was for an AI-created work by Chris Kashtanova. The book was called Zariah of the Dawn, where the AI-generated images were used for the book, and it was used it was a Mid-Journey, actually. They agreed to the copyright, and then they took it back and then released a statement this last week saying that AI-generated artwork cannot be copywritten. However, copyrighted. Is it copyrighted or copywritten?
They're both correct.
Are they both correct?
Yeah, they're both correct. Yeah.
Cannot be correct. So now the only way around this is you can prompt engineer an AI, and it can give you the original piece, and then you can take that original piece and then if you do significant editing to that original piece, it can then be copyrighted.
I'm really curious as to where that significant line is.
I think it's probably similar to fair use laws. Like on YouTube, you have fair use laws. So we can take a video of, let's say, something that we're commenting on, and as long as we give good enough commentary on this to produce an original work, but there's still no line for that.
Subjective, right? That goes back to that whole novel concept idea that there's no, and that even goes to, like,
novel thought. Yeah.
And this goes back to, music's been doing this for a long time. If you sample a song, you have X number of seconds, or you have to change it by, all of this. And I think, honestly, Mike, it begs your point that what have we ever created that's new? Everything we do is we take the inputs we get, we may iterate on them slightly, but everything is just a slight change of something we've seen, heard, felt, thought, or dreamed, right?
Exactly. And so it's fascinating, this idea of taking all human knowledge, all compiled human knowledge, and training these AI systems on it and giving them the ability to, comb through it and make something new, better, original. I don't know. Like, I don't think it has to be original. I don't think it has to be novel. I think the more inputs you have, the more data you have, the more interesting, just the greater things you can create. I don't know.
I agree, but in an interesting slight counterpoint to that, not that I disagree with you, but typically the more inputs you have, the closer to the average your output's going to be, right? Because you're going to see both sides of the spectrum. You're going to see all of the points in the middle. and what you may create is probably going to be closer to current reality. So I'm not
You could argue.
disagreeing with you,
I
but I
mean,
do
I
think
see what you're saying.
I
But
think
I
we're
don't
saying
think
the same thing, but
I don't think AI is an average maker. I
it
think
is
it's
not. That's a good point. That's
right,
a good point.
right. This is
It's gonna
not
it's gonna
Harrison
try to
Bergeron,
read
right?
between the lines a little bit more than
Yeah, it's going to take the best and create something even.
if
Yeah,
you ask it to. If you ask it to.
right, right. Absolutely. But like some of the somebody did. I don't know what program they used, but it was over the weekend. They remixed. Oh God, I wish I had this on hand. Anyway, it was this remix and sample that was completely AI generated using two very popular artists, and like it's making its rounds on TikTok and Twitter, and like
This wasn't Warren G regulators and
no.
okay, because I heard that one. Morgan Wallen has a song called "Chasing You," and Warren G's regulators, and someone mashed it up, but I wasn't sure.
Oh, that's
I
dope.
saw that on TikTok, so I thought maybe that was it.
Regulators,
It's
mount up.
It's actually a really sick mashup. So if that was AI, I would have been blown away.
Yeah, and it may very well could have been. I'll have to find this one for next week. It's
find
pretty
out.
wild.
Yeah.
The last thing that we wanted to cover today was SpaceX launching their most powerful rocket in history. The Starship is what I love that name, Starship. Such a great name for the most powerful rocket ever built. And this is the thing about Elon Musk, man. Like, as much as this motherfucker pisses me off, like he pulls off the reusable rocket. Like, it's crazy, some of this stuff. Now, again, he's not. It's not original thought.
Doesn't matter. He iterates well.
Exactly,
He's a great AI.
He's a great. Speaking of AI, Elon Musk builds Starship, but it didn't go off today. Unfortunately, it had a problem with one of its.
Right?
Yeah, it's been rescheduled between now and Wednesday. The problem was a valve in the booster's pressurized system appeared to be frozen, so they didn't want to risk it.
So have you seen any of these live before? Have you ever gone out there to the coast and watched one of these go off?
This one's actually shooting out of Texas, but no, I have not. Yeah, but I have not been. I have not. Now I've seen them from my house. You can see them here all the way from Orlando.
So we've gone out to the coast.
Have you?
And and gone up. So there's a couple of bridges that go up over the intercoastal waterways that are perfect sites if you don't have direct access. Strangely enough, I actually have, if I really wanted to have access and we could watch it from the launch site, we haven't done that yet. We need to make that happen. But if you go up on the bridge and watch it, we watched one of they sent off, I think it was 2 of the Dragon 9s. And it was the first time they were landing them back on the floating platform that it worked. So we actually got to watch the entire progression of the rocket go up, the payload detach, it continue to move on, and then the 2 different rockets both come down onto a floating platform. I'm sorry, I elbowed my mic into the intercoastal waterway and land on the platform. That is like, it's probably like watching the first time man made fire, or darn close to it, in my opinion.
The value that invention is going to deliver to manned space missions and our exploration of the solar system and potential galaxy cannot be understated. The biggest problem when it comes to developing these types of rockets is that you can only use them once. So Musk is saying that this Starship, this type, once they get this right, he can build them for $10 million a piece. Or no, he can launch a mission for $10 million every minute.
All right, let's start scraping some money together. We need to put a Singularity Lab satellite in space.
$10 million. That's
so
crazy.
That's awesome.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are well on our way towards technological singularity. Thank you so much for joining us today. More feature, great to see you, Bushy Bato. Thank you for joining us. Neurostream, Lord Boss, amazing to have you all here. Make sure you click the like button below, subscribe. Make sure you click on the notify me button so you can know whenever we go live. If you're listening to us, or if you'd like to listen to us, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts. You can also check us out on Spotify. And lots going on. Join us here every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are live. You can come comment. You can hang out in the chat. We always answer questions in the chat, and this is going to be super fun. It's only going to get more and more powerful. Please share this podcast with a friend who is just starting to discover what is this AI stuff. What's going on with technology? What's Musk doing? If they want to know, you share. Please share. Please share the show.
Are we all gonna die? Probably not. I don't know. We'll find out.
Are we gonna? If you have a friend who's terrified that AGI is going to kill us all, send them to the show.
Yeah,
Send them over.
Yeah.
Come join us.
Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. It's always a pleasure.
Bye-bye.